Hello, it is May, which means it is spring and I have things to do. I am cycling a lot, I am seeing friends, I am cooking, and of course I am reading. I have 4 books that are coming out this month that I would like to read. The first of these is The Strange Eventful History by Claire Massoud, which is the story of one family following them over the course of the decades from June 1940. They are a French family who live in Algeria, and it charts the unfolding story of the members of the family who moved between Salonika and Algeria, the US, Cuba, Canada, Argentina, Australia and France. Their itinerary is shaped by a search for elusive wholeness, as by the imperatives of politics, faith, family, industry and desire. I'm also planning to read The Safekeep by Yael van der Woeden, which is about a woman who lives in a house in the rural Netherlands. She has lost her parents and her brothers are slightly estranged from her because she is a slightly strange woman. It is 1961 and bomb craters have been filled, buildings reconstructed and the war is well and truly over. But Louis, her brother, begins to date a young woman, Eva, and drops her on his sister's doorstep to stay there for the season. And what happens begins to unravel our main character's idea of the world. One I'm very excited about is Enlightenment by Sarah Perry, because I loved The Essex Serpent so much. This is about 2 friends and who are fellow worshippers at a Baptist chapel in small town Essex. Their friendship and their faith are both threatened by the arrival of love. Thomas falls for a man who runs the local museum and they together develop an obsession with a vanished 19th century female astronomer. Meanwhile, Grace meets Nathan, a fellow 6th former who represents a different, wilder kind of life. And then the final book is A Person is a Prayer by Amala Kalia. This also follows one family over the course of 3 days in different parts of history. Bedi and Shushma, who are the parents in an arranged marriage. Their children Selina, Tara and Rohan, who years later are attempting to navigate life without their parents. They travel to the Ganges to unite their father's ashes with the opaque water, but it becomes clear that each of them has inherited the same desire to understand what makes a happy life, the same confusion about this question and the same enduring hope. That's what I'm planning to read this month, so let's go. Hello. I am so tired today. I am cycling from London to Brighton in June, which is 90 kilometres or 55 miles and quite hilly. And so whilst I do regularly cycle as part of my commute, which is a 32 kilometre or 20 mile round trip, I regularly do that. I haven't done like longer cycles before, so I have started doing some longer cycles to try and get into it. And last week I did 30 miles, and then yesterday I did 67 kilometers or 42 miles, which was 4 hours on my bike, and so I'm just so tired. So my apologies if I'm not completely able to talk, if I'm not functioning quite properly. I would take you with me on my bike rides. Maybe I'll do it next week, take you with me on my bike ride, but I don't have any like GoPro kind of equipment to like show you my rides. I have DNF'd one of the books that I was reading for this video. It's A Person is a Prayer by Amala Kalia, and I chose this almost entirely because of the cover. It looked lit to me, and it's about migration from Kenya to India to England across 6 decades, and I was really interested in reading it. I'm really interested in like migration narratives, and I thought it was going to be really beautifully written. It's not, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's not particularly beautifully written. It feels a little try-hard. It feels like the writing doesn't feel like integrated or accomplished. It feels like there is this sort of basic level writing and then sentences that are trying to be beautiful and lyrical, but they feel kind of disconnected from the rest of the narrative. And so I was finding that a bit draining. It was a bit like moments of purple prose among fairly simplistic writing. Each of the characters' thoughts about what was going to happen being very explicitly laid out for you on the page, and them being very obvious and like kind of one-dimensional. There wasn't a lot of nuance to the characters' drives or motives, and I just couldn't really see them as real people. They were just sort of spewing opinions that you would expect of a like stock character in that position. So I gave up on it, which is a shame, because I find it difficult to review books that I haven't finished, and when they're NetGalley books you kind of have to review them. I am also 20% of the way through this strange eventful history, which is similarly about migration and movement of people during difficult periods of history, about this family during the Second World War who are French colonials from Algeria, who have been living in Beirut and Salonika, and they get separated by the war, and then it flashes forward. So again, it is told over different periods, different generations. So the next bit is in the 50s in the US with one of the boys, the son who has gone to university. This one, I would again say the writing is not particularly special, but I am finding it interesting the way that it is exploring these characters. So I am interested in that, and the time period as well. I think that it is evoking that quite well. It's interesting the way that it's skipping around, because it's not like really looking at in depth at this time period. And obviously, like the 50s, since they are French Algerian, we're going to be in the moment of the Algerian fight for independence, in which the French do not cover themselves in glory, so I'm interested to see how this book plays that, being from the perspective of the colonialists. So I'm going to keep reading that and today, but I don't know how much more you're going to get from me, because I might also, like, it's like 3 o'clock and I might need a nap. This is my new breakfast obsession. It is kind of like having a wee cake for breakfast. It's just you mix milk and peanut butter and a sweetener, I used honey, and vanilla extract, and then you add oats and baking soda and flaxseed, and then you can just add whatever flavourings you like. So I added cinnamon because I also had some stewed apples in the freezer that I let sort of semi-defrost before I added the oats on top. It's just like a little apple crumble for breakfast, but because you put it in the oven for between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on how like liquidy, how much you'd rather it be, like cake batter or like a solid cake, and it's delicious. But it is quite hot now, so I'm just going to tell you about the books. So I am halfway through this Strange Eventful History by Claire Messud. This Strange Eventful History by Claire Messud, and I am enjoying it. It's interesting. It's jumping about like through the decades. So we started in like 1941, and then it's like 1952, and then maybe it was 1942, 52, 62, and now I'm up to 72, halfway through. So it's just going through the decades around the world, following this family. And it's interesting the way it's written, because big historical events are always kind of at the periphery of the book. So like we had the Second World War, and then we had the Algerian War of Independence, and they were in Argentina, but nothing actually seems to happen in the book. It just seems to skip, and it's much more about this family and the like small moments of family life and their relationships with one another, their difficult relationships. And I'm finding the characters very interesting, well drawn. They are complicated, and we're in different parts of their perspectives throughout, and it is interesting to explore that, but it does feel like it's kind of just avoiding history or politics in a way. I don't know, maybe that will come up more as we go on, but it feels like it's jumping about to like kind of touch on them but avoid the fact that these are like French colonials, and their experience of Algeria is very much glanced upon, much more as them as victims in terms of the way the French treated the Pied Noir, as they called their colonials, rather than like the actual experience of Algerians, which kind of put me off. In terms of the writing, it's quite nice. It's sometimes a little clunky, a little overdone, but for the most part, it is an enjoyable read. And I like the way it's exploring like kind of communication and a lack of communication, and the kind of guesswork about how people feel about you and how to interact with your family. It's very like there's a lot of discomfort in this book between these family relationships, which I'm enjoying. However, I do think there are a couple of perspectives that have been told from the perspective of a child, and I don't think Claire Messud is particularly good at writing from childlike perspectives. It feels quite forced. So I'm also 15% of the way into The Safekeep by Yael van der Woeden, which is set in the Netherlands in 1961, and it is from the perspective of this very strange woman. She is living in this house, a rural house in the Netherlands that where she lived with her mother until her mother died, and now she lives alone. She has two brothers. One is gay, and one is kind of feckless. He's the older brother who the house technically belongs to. And she is kind of obsessive about her maid stealing from her, and obsessive about them belonging to this house, and very like rigid and controlling, and definitely kind of an unreliable narrator. And it's set in the early 60s, and the older brother has now dropped his his new girlfriend off to live with her whilst he travels away for work, and she is like really uncomfortable with this and very unhappy. And there are moments of like random, she talks about the past and what happened to them in the 40s during the war as well. There's very much a hangover of the Second World War in this, and there are moments of this like random violence, but the writing is so cold and so detached and uncomfortable, and I'm enjoying that. I do think like this house, they moved there in 1944, and their uncle found this house for them in 1944, and there have been some hints about the past of the house before they lived there. And so whilst it's not mentioned in the synopsis, I kind of think I know where that's going, and I'm not going to spoil it because I don't want to. If I'm right, I don't want to spoil it, but if it's supposed to be a twist, it's quite obvious from 15% of the way in what's going on, so it doesn't feel particularly twisty, because I think this is kind of like a historical domestic thriller kind of a situation, and it definitely has the tension in the writing, but if that's the only twist, then I'm not going to be very shocked or surprised by it. I'm going to eat my breakfast now. Hello, so someone has just put up a little free library near me. I'll leave them linked in the description. So I've come with a pile of books to go and drop some off. I've been meaning to drop these off for like over a year now, somewhere, so this little free library is a good excuse, but I need to find it first. Are you sure? Yeah, go ahead. Hello, I'm sorry for turning up in front of you incredibly sweaty, but I have just cycled home, and if I don't talk to you about this book halfway through, I won't be able to finish it, so I've been putting this off, and I keep putting off talking to you, and then I can't read the book. So I am halfway through The Safekeep now, and I am enjoying it much more than I was at the beginning. What I thought was going to happen hasn't been revealed yet. Like that twist, if that is the twist, hasn't been revealed yet, but where it has gone is entirely not where I was expecting, and I am really here for it. I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot messier and impulsive read than I was expecting. I wouldn't say necessarily it was the best written book in terms of style, but in terms of getting me like hooked on it, it's definitely working. I'm really enjoying it, and I've been like on the edge of my seat, and it has some nice writing. Like, the terror was as wide as the want, a boulder moved from the gaping mouth of the cave. Or she had said too much. She knew at the moment the words were out. More than she had told anyone, more than she had ever imagined telling this girl, this burnt-edged girl, this tight-seamed girl. It does have some nice writing as well. I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Back at the start of this year, I was trying to read like some more page-turnery genre fiction, and that didn't work out for me, but I think I found it here in The Safekeep. This definitely feels like it has thrillery edge, but it has nice writing, and I'm interested in the ideas as well, that it is looking at these ideas of home and identity and secrets, and kind of a puritanical, kind of Calvinist idea of morality and goodness and purity, and what is bubbling under the surface of those things. Hello, so I was editing this video and realised I never wrapped up this strange eventful history, so thought I should probably do that now. I thought it was just okay. It, as I said when I was halfway through, it seems to like skip over the more political parts and kind of just glance against them, when that's kind of what I was interested in reading it for. It never really situates this family properly in their historical narrative. It is much more interpersonal, and I don't know, it just felt cold, but also sentimental and kind of lionizing these people at the same time. And I think when I got to the end, there was a bit, there's a perspective that starts being only from the first person, or there's a perspective that starts being from the first person, and it's the only one that is from the first person. And then the very end, it's revealed that it's kind of based on Isma, no, can't remember her name, on the writer's personal family history. And so a lot of it is stories she was told, and then like her expansions on that. And so I assume the first person character is based on herself. And so it becomes obvious why it lent into a more kind of, that it didn't get as deep and it didn't get as conflicted with the characters. They're not all nice characters, and they certainly are doing things that we can judge them for, but it just didn't feel like it went anywhere particularly interesting. Like, the writing was fine, their characters were fairly well fleshed out, realistic people, but in terms of the narrative, I don't feel like it was really doing anything. It felt like it just felt a bit flat. It just fell a bit flat for me, and I don't really have much else to say about it. Like, it was a little disappointing and really long. I think a bit too long for what it was doing. I don't think it needed to be that long, because it didn't, I don't know, it felt like it kind of wanted to glance against certain things. Like, there was elements of a slightly queer narrative, or of the politics of being the colonialists in Algeria, or of like gender politics in the home, that were sort of glanced upon but never really properly gone into. There was never, whilst it allowed characters to be flawed, it didn't allow them to be bad. And I think that might have been the familial thing, the issue of the familial being the story. Hello, rather an odd angle today, because my cat is on my lap and I don't want to get up, but I am 20% of the way in this book, and I wanted to give you my thoughts before I kept reading, and I want to keep reading. So this is, oh my god, it's the new Sarah Perry book, who is a writer. I loved The Essex Serpent, and I didn't love Melmoth. So this one is called Enlightenment. And I was looking forward to reading the new Sarah Perry, and so far it is not disappointing. Really beautifully written. In it, well, I am really enjoying the writing, at least. It's not flowery, but it is lovely in its way. It's the sort of writing that I talk about feeling comfortable in. Like, as soon as I start reading it, I know I'm going to enjoy the turn of phrase, I'm going to enjoy the way it's written. He headed down a sloping alley and on the upper bridge road, which passed in Essex for a hill, so that the red brick terraces going over the hump had the look of a sleeping dragon's long articulated spine. My cat just got up, so the whole reason I'm sat here and filming on my phone is now unnecessary. Anyway, I am finding myself a little lost and confused occasionally with the way it's written. Like, things are sort of intersecting with each other at random points, and you have to kind of just keep going until we come back to where we left off, like random moments where we jump into a different character's perspective a few days ago and then come back. But so I've had to reread stuff thinking I was confused, and then I realise it comes out when you keep reading, which is why I gave up listening to the audiobook of it. But I am enjoying it so far. It's reminding me a little bit of Possession by A.S. Byatt, but I think that's because one of the themes in it, one of the like plot points, is that they've discovered this woman's letters in this old hall, and nobody knows much about her. She was married to the man who owned it in the Victorian period, so it's like a Victorian period women's letters that we're reading, which is similar to In Possession, where you have the letters of the two writers, this undiscovered woman writer being rediscovered, and here we have this missing woman, this kind of mystery of this woman. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses. I like the writing, I like the characters so far. Part 2 of I want to talk to you about Enlightenment, but my cat's on my lap, so I am stuck in a reclined position. I have got to part 2 of the book, Enlightenment, and I'm still enjoying it. It is reminding me more of The Essex Serpent than Melmoth. It is dealing with religion and kind of Victorian science, in the same way that the Essex Serpent did, the kind of conjunctures of science and belief, and sort of a steadfast faith, a difficult, complicated faith, that is from a like high control religious group, I guess. They are strict Baptist, and also it uses like Essex folklore in a way. There are moments where they went to this tree, this ancient tree, and she says, and so there are giants in Essex yet, which was, I really enjoyed that part. And it's using a lot of like the Essex countryside, but it has jumped forward in time now. So the first part was in 97, and now we are in 2008. So we're going to see what's happened in the intervening 11 years, because initially our mate of the girl was 17, but now she's obviously going to be 28. Ow, Winkle. So we'll see how that goes. October then, and stars fell over the wet black verges of the A12, and the wet green lawns of the Colchester Barracks. They fell over Old Winter Tomb Tree, and the housing estate in Chelmsford, going up where poorhouses and leper colonies had been. Being fair-minded, they also fell on Audley, and on a tall man coming down the high street with a satchel on his back. He wore the vestments of a Catholic priest, which suited him so well he might have grown them out of his own marrow. I have finished the Safekeep, and something about endings not living up to the middles of books for me lately. It definitely happened with the Safekeep too. So I was talking about the twist that I predicted from the first chapter, and that twist did happen. It was exactly what I thought would happen, and there wasn't any like additional twist to it or any like extra stuff that I wasn't expecting. It happened exactly as I thought it would, which was a little disappointing because I was feeling the tension, and it didn't happen. The book did get a lot sexier than I was expecting, and I wasn't against it, but I just felt like it had all this tension, all this great like discomfort in the first half, and then it turned into melodrama kind of in the second half, and it felt very obvious and on the nose. Like, it was still nicely written, I still enjoyed reading it, but it just didn't have anything more. It was very exactly what I expected going in, and it didn't do anything more interesting. It was just a fine, fun read. Like, I think if you like to read kind of simple psychological thrillers, like not a lot of violence or anything like that, but kind of a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of like interpersonal strange behaviour, but nothing going kind of differently than you would expect, then I think you would enjoy this, because it fulfills that. It has the tension and everything, but it didn't do anything that I wasn't expecting, and that really disappointed me. I have finished oh my god, why can't I remember the name of it? The Sarah Perry book, Enlightenment. I have finished it now. It was a few days ago, and I have to say it hasn't really stuck with me. I enjoyed the reading experience, and when I was reading it I wanted to get back to it, but now that I've finished it I feel like it's just gone out of my head. So I guess that says it's not going to be a new favourite, but I did enjoy the reading experience. It was a lot, it had me thinking a lot. The ways it explored kind of ideas about like fate and not fate, what's the word I want? Self-determination. Free will. The idea of free will and what is actually possible for us to choose, considering the situation that we're in. Predetermination versus free will. And the kind of intersections, very similarly to the Essex Serpent, there was this like extreme, very strict religion juxtaposed with Essex mythology and also science, but not particularly modern science, although there were moments where our main character, who is a writer, Thomas, was looking at astrology and really, not astrology, astronomy, and really getting into astronomy. So there were elements of the science throughout, but it was sort of looking at the place in the world and how small, inconsequential little human lives, this strange eventful history, I guess, the same as the other one, the idea of God and his control, his power over you, but also the smallness of yourself in the universe. Like, would God really care for one small child when he created the entire universe, if that is your belief? So it is, yeah, it was an enjoyable read. and I really loved the writing style. I loved the writing style so much. Definitely Sarah Perry is a writer that I can get on board with, and really feel like her writing works for me. But there was also at the end a reference to Cora Seaburn from The Essex Serpent, and a callback to that initially I found quite charming, and then I felt got a little bit overplayed towards the end. But I did enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it as much as The Essex Serpent, but The Essex Serpent I read so many years ago, and I'm definitely a different reader now. Those are the books that I read that came out in May. I know this video has come out much later than I intended. I have been cycling, I have been unwell, I have had a lot going on this month, so things haven't ended up quite as I intended, but I hope you enjoyed the video anyway. Let me know your thoughts as always in the comments down below, and I will see you again very soon. Bye bye.